Humans often associate grief with loss. A person leaves, and their absence creates pain. But sometimes, the pain comes not from losing someone who made you feel seen, but from losing someone who made you feel invisible. And still, you miss them. This seems illogical. Why long for someone who didn't truly see you? Why crave connection with a person who barely noticed your inner world? This video explores the hidden psychology behind why people miss those who neglected them emotionally. It isn't about nostalgia. It isn't even about love. It's about something deeper: identity, validation, and the craving for significance. Let's begin. 1. Emotional invisibility and the need to be seen. Humans are social creatures wired for recognition. Being seen, truly seen, is a form of psychological survival. Children seek eye contact. Adults seek emotional resonance. Everyone wants to feel real to someone else. When someone consistently fails to notice your thoughts, needs, or emotional presence, it creates what psychologists call emotional neglect. This form of neglect is not loud. It doesn't look like cruelty. It looks like silence, missed moments, indifference. And yet, it is deeply wounding. When you're with someone who ignores your inner world, your brain doesn't just register absence. It registers rejection. And paradoxically, that rejection activates the need to be accepted. The more you feel unseen, the more desperate you become to be seen. This dynamic creates what psychologists refer to as attachment hunger, a relentless, often unconscious need to earn attention from the very person who withholds it. So when they're gone, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like unfinished business. 2. The illusion of potential connection. People don't just fall in love with others. They fall in love with what could be. In relationships where emotional neglect is present, the mind often constructs a narrative. If I just try harder, they'll finally see me. This is the illusion of potential. The belief that closeness is just out of reach, if only the right words or actions are used. It keeps people chasing the emotional equivalent of a mirage. This dynamic resembles what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When someone is warm one day and cold the next, the brain stays hooked, waiting for the next emotional high. Even if those highs are rare, they feel powerful. They create memories that override the long stretches of neglect. So when the person leaves, your brain doesn't just grieve the relationship, it grieves the unrealized possibility, the person they could have been, the closeness you almost had. You miss the imagined version of them, the one that never truly existed. The identity trap, who you were. Around them. Being around someone who makes you feel invisible does not erase your identity. It distorts it. You may have found yourself trying to be louder, kinder, more interesting, more helpful. You shaped yourself around what you thought would make them care. This creates what psychologists call a false self, a performance constructed for approval. Over time, you become attached not just to the person, but to the version of you that existed in their presence, even if that version was anxious, insecure, or constantly striving. When they leave, you don't just lose them. You lose the emotional role you played. And because the human ego is wired for closure, the absence of that role creates a sense of disorientation. Who are you now that you're not trying to earn their attention? This question haunts the subconscious, and it keeps the emotional tether alive. 4. Shame, self-blame, and the need to make sense of it. When humans are neglected emotionally, they often don't blame the other person. They blame themselves. Maybe I was too needy. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe I wasn't enough. This self-blame is a form of control. It feels safer to believe that you caused the neglect than to accept that someone else simply chose not to care. Why? Because if it's your fault, then maybe there's something you could have done differently, something you could fix next time. This thinking creates shame, the belief that you are inherently unworthy of attention or love. and so you miss them. Not because they treated you well, but because you still hope, somewhere deep inside, that their absence was a mistake, that if they came back, they would finally see you. This hope is not logical. It is psychological survival. 5. Emotional withdrawal and trauma. Echoes. For those with histories of childhood emotional neglect, this pattern can feel familiar. Being ignored, overlooked, or emotionally dismissed as a child creates a nervous system that expects invisibility. When someone makes you feel invisible as an adult, it doesn't just hurt. It confirms an old belief. I don't matter. Ironically, this familiarity can feel like home. The pain is recognizable, predictable, and so the attachment deepens, even in dysfunction. This is known as trauma reenactment, the subconscious drive to recreate early emotional wounds in adult relationships in the hope of finally rewriting the ending. You don't just miss them. You miss the chance to finally be seen by someone who never really did. And because the ending never changed, the longing doesn't either. When you miss someone who made you feel invisible, you're not mourning love. You're mourning possibility, identity, closure, meaning. You're missing a version of yourself that was never accepted. You're missing the fantasy of being noticed, the imagined closeness that never came. The pain is real, but the connection you grieve may never have been. This is not weakness. It is the mind trying to complete an emotional equation that never balanced. To heal is to recognize the mirage for what it was. Not to shame yourself for longing, but to ask, what part of me still needs to be seen? And to give that visibility not to them, but to yourself.